Welcome back to the Deep Dive. It is February 18th, 2026, and I do. I want to start today with a question that might be a little personal, maybe a little painful.
I'm ready.
How are those New Year's resolutions going?
Oof. Right for the jugular.
Because if you're anything like the statistical average, and I say this with absolutely zero judgment, I am right there with you. They probably died a very quiet death somewhere around, January 19th?
That is the statistical cliff, yes. I think some data analysts actually call it Quitter's Day.
That's just brutal. But here's the thing that I find so fascinating, and it's really why we're here today, even though it's mid-February, even though we might have already, fallen off the wagon, eaten the cake, skipped the gym for 3 weeks straight, we still get that itch, don't we? That little voice that says, okay, I messed up, but Monday's coming.
Monday's a new week.
Monday, I'm going to get it together. Or, hey, my birthday's next month. That's when the real change is going to happen.
It's the allure of the clean slate. It feels almost biological, this need for a reset.
Exactly. And that is what we are unpacking today. We have a huge stack of research in front of us. We're talking articles from management science, some pretty heavy neurobiological studies on dopamine pathways, psychological theories from ResearchGate.
All circling this one central tension.
Yes. Why does buying the running shoes feel so much better than the actual act of running?
It's a classic problem of anticipation versus reality, or prediction versus reality, I should say.
And why do we love planning the project?
Yeah.
Buying the new binders, making the color-coded spreadsheets, so much more than actually doing the work.
The setup is always the most exciting part.
And maybe the most important question. Why are we so addicted to starting over and so, historically bad at finishing?
And the answer, which we're going to dig into, is not because you're lazy. It's not a character flaw. It's biological. It's structural. In a lot of ways, your brain is actually wired to be a serial starter.
So that's our mission for this deep dive. We're going to dissect this fresh start effect. We're going to look at the neurobiology of why we quit. And spoiler alert, dopamine is maybe not the friend you think it is.
It's a bit of a liar, yeah. And we're going to talk about the saggy middle.
A saggy middle.
It's where dreams go to die. It sounds like a problem you'd have at the gym, but it's actually a really profound psychological barrier.
And then finally, we're going to try to piece together how to actually transition from being that serial starter to a long-term finisher, how to get from the thrill of the start to the satisfaction of the finish.
So I think the best place to start is with the phenomenon itself. Let's define it. Because this isn't just a feeling we all have, it's a well-documented psychological concept.
Right.
It's called the fresh start effect. The term was coined by a team of researchers, Katie Milkman, Hengxin Day, and Jason Reese. And what they found, essentially, is that people are significantly more likely to take what they call aspirational actions right after these temporal landmarks.
Temporal landmarks. I love that phrase. It makes time feel like a landscape you can navigate.
It really does.
So what counts as a landmark? Is it just the big stuff?
Well, they break it down into two main buckets, which is a useful way to think about it. First, you've got your social landmarks. These are the shared dates, the ones everyone recognizes.
The very date.
That's the big one, the obvious one. But it also includes the start of a new semester, the beginning of a month, or even just the beginning of a week. This is where you get the Monday effect.
The diet starts Monday phenomenon. I feel like I've lived my entire life in this perpetual cycle of just waiting for Monday to fix everything.
It's a collective cultural reset button. We all agree that Monday is a new beginning, but then you have the second bucket, which is maybe even more powerful, the personal landmarks.
Okay, so that's stuff just for me.
Exactly. Your birthday is a massive one, an anniversary, changing jobs, moving to a new city, or even just a new apartment. Any date that stands out from the gray, undifferentiated flow of normal time.
They create a kind of psychological separation.
That's the key. A separation.
And I'm assuming the data on this is pretty solid. It's not just, an observation.
Oh, the data is overwhelming. Milkman and her team looked at absolutely massive data sets. For instance, they analyzed Google search trends.
Okay.
And they found that searches for terms like diet or gym visit don't just spike on January 1st. They spike predictably, like clockwork, at the beginning of every single week, every month, and right after federal holidays.
Okay, the holiday thing makes sense to me. You've just eaten a ton, you've been sitting around. It feels like you're just correcting for that excess.
That's the common assumption, that it's purely compensatory. I ate too much turkey at Thanksgiving, so now I have to diet. But the research shows it's much, much deeper than that.
How so?
They looked at gym attendance data from a university, and yes, it peaks at the start of a semester, no surprise there. But it also shows a distinct peak right after an individual student's birthday.
The birthday.
A birthday. And think about that. You don't usually spend your birthday binge eating for 3 days straight to the point where you need weeks of gym time to recover.
Right. A birthday is usually just, a piece of cake and dinner with friends.
Yeah.
It's not a caloric catastrophe.
Exactly. It's not about the calories. It's about the passage of time. It's about turning a year older. That calendar date itself, that marker, is what triggers the I need to get my life together reflex.
Wow. So the date itself is the trigger, not necessarily our behavior leading up to it.
There's another incredible data set from a website called Stick. Are you familiar with it?
Vaguely. Isn't that the site where you put actual money on the line to achieve your goals?
Right.
It's like a commitment contract, right?
That's the one. It's a high-stakes accountability platform. If you fail to meet your goal, your money goes to a recipient you designate. It could be a charity, a friend, or, and this is the clever part, an anti-charity.
An anti-charity.
An organization you absolutely despise. It really raises the stakes of failure.
That is some serious motivation.
It is. And the researchers found that the number of people creating these high-stakes contracts, it increases by 62.9% at the start of a week. Every week.
63%, just because it's Monday.
And at the start of a year, it increases by 145.3%.
Wow, so we are just desperate for these reset buttons. But why? What is actually happening in our minds when the calendar flips from Sunday to Monday? Why does one feel so clean and the other so messy?
This brings us to a really powerful analogy the researchers use. They call it the psychological fence.
I love that visual. Okay, let's unpack that.
Imagine your life as a timeline. The temporal landmark, your birthday, New Year's Day, whatever, is a fence you build on that timeline.
Okay.
On one side of that fence is the old me. The old me was lazy, disorganized, ate junk food, procrastinated on that big project, generally messed things up.
Right, we don't like that guy.
We don't. But on the other side of the fence is the new me. And the new me is disciplined, focused, wakes up at 5 a.m., drinks green smoothies. The new me is a productivity genius.
The new me is the person I think I am every single time I buy a new planner. I smell the fresh paper and I think this person have their life together.
That's it exactly. And the mechanism behind this fence is a cognitive bias called mental accounting.
Mental accounting, like for finances.
It's the same principle. We treat time as separate accounts. When a landmark hits, we psychologically close the books on the previous period, all those failures, all that guilt. That wasn't you. That was last week you. That was 2025 you.
That is so convenient. It's like cognitive money laundering. You just wash away all the debt and start fresh.
It's incredibly effective for boosting short-term motivation. It's something we can call cognitive cache clearing. Think about your computer's web browser.
Okay.
When the cache gets full of junk, everything slows down, it gets bogged down. The fresh start is like hitting clear history or just restarting the whole machine. It stops you from ruminating on past mistakes. It frees up all that mental energy. You feel lighter, you feel more capable because the weight of past failures is no longer attached to your current identity.
But there has to be a trap in there, doesn't there? Because if I just, disown my past self, I'm completely ignoring why the old me failed in the first place.
Yeah.
It feels like I'm firing the guy who crashed the car and then hiring him back the next day under a new name and expecting a different result.
That is the absolute crux of the problem. Because these landmarks, they disrupt our day-to-day in-the-weeds thinking the how, and they force a shift to what psychologists call high-level construal.
High-level construal. Okay, what does that mean in plain English?
It means you're looking at the big picture. You're zooming out. When we think about a fresh start, we think abstractly. We focus on the desirability of the outcome.
The shiny object.
The shiny object. I want to be fit. I want to be a published author. I want to have a clean house. We see the beautiful finished product.
We see the training montage in the movie where everything goes perfectly and it only takes 3 minutes.
Exactly. But in doing that, we completely ignore the low-level construal. And that's the gritty reality. That's the feasibility, the how. We ignore the effort cost.
Right.
We're so focused on the vision of crossing the finish line that we forget the race is 26 miles long, it's uphill, it's raining, and we haven't trained. And this leads us directly into what's known as the false hope syndrome.
False hope syndrome. That sounds like a title of my autobiography.
It's a really vicious cycle. Because of that identity separation, the belief that new me is disciplined, we set wildly unrealistic goals. We think, old me couldn't wake up at 5 a.m., but new me can.
Yeah.
But here's the reality check. The calendar date changed, but your environment didn't. You're in the same house with the same bed, the same stressors, the same kids, the same distractions. The fresh start changed your attitude, but it did nothing to change your skills or your circumstances.
So we are, in effect, setting ourselves up for a crash.
But but it feels so good to start. I mean, honestly, the best part of any diet is day one.
Like,
The best part of a project is the setup. Why is that? Why do we get such a buzz, such a high
yeah.
from just deciding to do something new? And now we get to leave psychology for a moment and go straight into the neurobiology because we have to talk about dopamine.
Mhm.
But we really need to correct a very, very common misunderstanding about it.
The pleasure molecule, that's what everyone calls it.
Right. And it's not totally wrong, but it's imprecise. We think of dopamine as the chemical of pleasure, the reward you get after you eat the chocolate cake. But technically, neuroscientists see it as a neuromodulator of motivation and reward prediction.
Okay, so distinguish that for me. Motivation and reward prediction.
It's not about the having, it's about the getting. It's the chemical of craving, of pursuit.
So it's the wanting, not the liking.
Perfectly put. When you conceive of a new plan, let's use the example of deciding to write a novel. Your brain's ventral tegmental area, or VTA, releases a flood of dopamine into a region called the nucleus accumbens.
Okay, a little technical, VTA to the nucleus accumbens.
The key thing to understand is that this happens during the planning phase. As soon as you have the idea, your prefrontal cortex, the key FC, immediately starts simulating success. You aren't just thinking about typing chapter 1.
No, I'm thinking about the book tour.
You're visualizing the book launch party, you're seeing your name on the cover in a bookstore, you're imagining the glowing reviews.
And my brain loves that little movie.
Your brain loves it, and it gives you the chemical reward for that movie right now. You get a hit of dopamine from the anticipation of the reward, not from the work itself. This is what we can call the planning high.
So my brain, in a way, thinks I've already done some of the work just because I made a really nice spreadsheet for the project.
Precisely. It's what some researchers call the false progress cycle. Your brain literally mistakes that mental simulation for actual tangible progress. You feel euphoric, you feel accomplished, just from making the to-do list.
This explains why I have a drawer full of beautiful, empty journals. Buying the journal felt like a major accomplishment. The dopamine was in the purchase.
Buying the journal is a classic, low-cost, high-reward neurochemical event. It's easy, it takes 5 minutes online, and the dopamine payoff is immediate and potent. Actually writing in that journal every single day for a year, that is extremely high cost, and the reward is massively delayed.
And this spirals into what the outline calls the addiction to reinvention.
Yes. If you feel like you're addicted to starting over, it's because that initiation phase offers a reliable, predictable dopamine spike. But as soon as you start the actual work,
The novelty wears off.
the novelty vanishes, the dopamine drops. And what does a brain-seeking dopamine do? It craves that high again. And the easiest, fastest way to get it back isn't to push through the boring, difficult work. It's to abandon the current project and start a shiny new one.
So we become serial starters. We're just little junkies chasing the novelty high.
We're chasing the prediction of reward rather than the reward itself. It's a biological loop. We're chemically wired to love the beginning of things because that's where the possibility is maximized and the perceived cost is minimized.
Okay, so we ride this big wave of dopamine and optimism off the cliff of January 1st. And then inevitably we land. We hit what you call the execution phase. And this is where it all gets messy.
This is the critical transition. It's moving from project planning to project execution. In the planning phase, you're the architect, dreaming up the beautiful skyscraper. In the execution phase, you're the construction worker who has to actually dig the foundation in the mud.
The dream collides with reality. And our brains handle these two phases very differently.
Very differently, and this is where we experience a literal dopamine crash. As execution begins, that novelty is gone. You're not imagining the book launch anymore. You're staring at a blinking cursor on a blank page and realizing you have no idea what's supposed to happen in chapter 3.
Done there.
And at that moment, a different part of your brain takes the lead. The anterior cingulate cortex, or ACC, starts to really monitor the effort you're expending. It detects errors. It's the part of the brain that says, hey, wait a minute, this is hard.
The internal accountant.
The internal accountant who's actually looking at the costs. And because your brain is no longer predicting a new reward, the dopamine levels plummet. You are now face-to-face with the effort cost.
And this brings us to one of my favorite concepts from the research stack, the stuck-in-the-middle effect, or STIM, as they call
The
it.
STEM, yes. And it refers to something called the U-shaped motivation curve.
Okay, so picture the letter U.
Right. Your motivation is incredibly high at the very start. That's the left arm of the U. That's the fresh start effect we've been talking about. And interestingly, your motivation gets very high again at the very end.
The right arm of the U.
That's what's known as the end spurt.
Oh, yeah, I know that feeling. You see the finish line of the race, and you suddenly have this burst of energy to sprint, even if you were totally exhausted just 30 seconds before.
Exactly. But in the middle, at the very bottom of the U, that's the saggy middle. And the psychology behind why we sag there is absolutely fascinating. It comes down to something called the small area principle.
Okay, break that down for me. Small area principle.
It's all about your reference points, where you're focusing your attention. When you're at the start of a goal, let's say you've committed to reading a 300-page book.
Okay.
When you're on page 20, you're looking back at the beginning. Your focus is on the progress you've made. Look, I'm 20 pages in. I've come so far from page 0. You're focused on the small area you've completed.
You're looking backward at the start line. You have a proximal reference point, something close by.
Right. Now, fast forward. You're on page 280. Where are you looking?
To the end. Only 20 pages to go?
Exactly. You're looking forward to the finish line. Your focus is on the small area that remains. But what about when you're on page 150?
Uh-oh. The start line is really far away. And the finish line is also really far away.
Exactly. You lack a proximal reference point in either direction. The perceived distance feels maximum. You're just floating in the middle of the ocean with no land in sight in any direction.
I feel that in my bones. And the research shows this isn't just for big life goals, right?
Right.
This happens in tiny, mundane tasks, too.
It does. It's a fundamental aspect of goal pursuit. There was one study on typo correction. They had participants proofread a series of 9 short essays.
Okay.
People found typos much, much faster in the second essay near the beginning and in the 8th essay near the end. But in the 5th essay, right in the middle, they slowed down, they were less accurate, they missed more errors.
So they literally slacked off in the middle of a 10-minute task.
Their attention sagged. And there's a really famous study about lighting Hanukkah candles.
Oh, I read about this one. It's fascinating because it's about, religious tradition, which you'd think would be immune to this.
You would think. Researchers tracked Jewish students lighting the menorah. The tradition, of course, is to light candles for 8 consecutive nights. The data showed that students were very likely to light them on the first night and on the 8th, the final night.
Or in the middle.
The middle nights, nights 3 through 6, adherence just dropped off a cliff. It's the exact same U shape.
Wow.
And it gets even darker than that. It's not just about laziness or forgetting, it also affects our ethics.
Our ethics. How can our ethics sag in the middle?
Because in the middle of a task sequence, people are statistically more likely to cheat.
You're kidding.
Not at all. There was a study where people were rewarded for correctly predicting coin flips, and they had to self-report their results. People were significantly more likely to lie and say they guessed correctly in the middle rounds of the game than in the first few or the last few rounds.
Why? Do we just think nobody's watching in the middle? What's the logic there?
It's all about identity. At the start and at the end of something, our actions feel very salient. They feel diagnostic. I am starting strong. I am finishing with integrity. Our actions feel like they define who we are.
Right.
But the middle feels like this ambiguous gray zone. We subconsciously feel like our actions there are less representative of our true character, so we give ourselves a pass, we slack off, we cut a corner.
And this sounds like it's the direct precursor to the what the hell effect.
It is exactly where it leads. In that gray zone, that saggy middle, if you have one small slip-up, you eat one donut on a Wednesday in the middle of your clean eating month, the logic kicks in.
The logic of, well, I already ruined the perfect streak.
I ruined the clean slate. I'm in the messy middle anyway. What the hell? I might as well eat the whole box of donuts and just start over fresh next Monday.
We use the failure of the middle as the justification we need to trigger a brand new fresh start.
And the cycle repeats again and again.
Okay, so we have the psychology of the fresh start getting us hooked and the psychology of the saggy middle pushing us out. I want to circle back to the biology for a second, though, because there was a really critical, almost shocking point in the sources about the relationship between dopamine and effort.
This is a complete game changer if you really want to understand why hard work feels so hard.
The research, I think it was from PMC, suggested that dopamine is, for lack of a better word, a bit of a scam artist when it comes to judging effort.
It is. The sources say there is a striking consensus in neurophysiological research, and this is looking specifically at those midbrain dopamine neurons and the nucleus accumbens we mentioned earlier.
Okay.
The consensus is that dopamine consistently and powerfully codes for future reward. It screams from the rooftops, "Do it! Think of the prize at the end!"
But there's a big but coming.
But it is surprisingly, almost shockingly, insensitive to effort cost.
Wait, what does that mean exactly? Insensitive to effort cost.
It means that the dopamine system doesn't effectively calculate the grind. It's a go signal based almost entirely on the potential gain. It convinces you to sign up for the marathon based on the glorious vision of the medal and the cheering crowds.
But it doesn't do the math on the blisters.
It does not factor in the blisters, the 4 a.m. wake-up calls for training runs, the exhaustion at mile 18, the sheer boredom of running for hours. It basically sells you the car without ever mentioning the monthly payments or the cost of gas and insurance.
That is a perfect analogy.
It's an evolutionary mismatch. In a primitive environment, seeing a berry bush triggered a dopamine response to get you to move toward it. The effort was usually immediate and short-term. Walk 100 feet, pick the berries.
Simple.
But in our modern world of long-term goals, writing a book, getting a degree, building a business, the effort is massive, sustained, and often unrewarding for long stretches. Our dopamine system just wasn't built for that.
So our biology is set up to say yes to the goal because of the huge dopamine spike from the vision, but we lack the sustained neurochemical support to endure the actual effort required to get there.
Exactly. And this varies from person to person. The studies show that people who are described as go-getters often have a higher baseline level of dopamine in these motivated brain regions. Conversely, people who are labeled slackers, or more accurately, people with lower baseline motivation, often aren't just lazy. Their brains are biologically less willing to exert effort for a distant reward because the chemical push to overcome the cost just isn't as strong.
That actually makes me feel a little better about all my failed resolutions.
Yeah.
It wasn't just me. My brain sold me a bill of goods.
It did. But, and this is the important part, knowing that is the first step to overriding the system. You now know you can't trust the dopamine salesman to stick around and do the work for you.
So let's pivot to that. This is the big question. We know the trap. We understand the biology. How do we fix it? How do we actually move from being addicted to starting over to being someone who finishes things?
The fundamental shift, the core idea, has to be moving from an emotion-based model of progress to a structure-based model.
Okay, explain that difference. Emotion versus structure.
The emotion-based model is waiting for motivation to strike. It's waiting for that fresh start feeling. It's relying on inspiration. The structure-based model acknowledges that motivation is a fickle friend who will absolutely leave the building. So you need to build a system that locks the door so you can't leave with it.
I like that. So the sources list several strategies. Let's start with strategy 1, engineering persistence through microhabits.
Yes. This is all about one thing. How do you manufacture dopamine in the boring middle?
Manufacture it. You can do that.
You can. Remember, we get a hit of dopamine from anticipation, but also from the feeling of completion. In the middle of a huge year-long project, there are no completions. It's just an endless desert of work.
Right.
So you have to break that enormous goal down into what the sources call ridiculously small micro goals.
Give me a concrete example.
Don't set a goal to write a novel that provides zero completion-based dopamine until you type the end a year from now. Instead, set a goal to write one paragraph.
Just one paragraph. That seems almost too easy.
That is precisely the point. First, it lowers the activation energy to near zero, so it's easy to start. But more importantly, when you finish that one paragraph, your brain gets a small, genuine dopamine release from the act of completion, not just from imagination.
You're hacking the reward system by creating tiny, achievable rewards.
You're feeding the beast a steady diet of small wins. And you can amplify this effect with what we can call completion triggers.
What's a completion trigger?
A physical act, checking a box on a list, moving a digital sticky note on a Trello board from the doing column to the done column. That simple physical action sends a powerful visual signal of progress to your brain, which reinforces the dopamine release. You're basically leaving a trail of breadcrumbs for your brain to follow through the dark forest of the saggy middle.
I love that. Okay, what about strategy 2, visualizing the middle?
This one directly combats the stim effect, that stuck in the middle feeling. The problem, remember, is the lack of a nearby reference point. So the solution is to create artificial ones.
Why do you do that?
You shorten the middle by reframing the goal. If you have to run a 10-lap race, don't think of it as one 10-lap race. Mentally, break it into two separate 5-lap races.
Ah, so at lap 5, you're not in the middle of nowhere. You're at the finish line of race number 1.
Exactly. You've just reset the small area principle. You are now at the end of one thing and the beginning of the next. You've minimized the time your brain has to spend in that ambiguous, motivation-sapping gray zone.
That's really clever. Okay, strategy 3 was intermittent rewards.
This is an incredibly powerful one, borrowed from behavioral psychology. Don't wait until the very end of the project to reward yourself, but also, and this is key, don't make the rewards too predictable.
Why not?
Because the brain habituates to predictable rewards. The dopamine response weakens. It loves variable rewards. It's why slot machines are so addictive. So set up milestones in the middle where you get a treat, a night off, a small purchase, a nice meal, but keep them somewhat flexible and surprising. It keeps your brain engaged and guessing.
And the final tactic, strategy 4, is environmental auditing. This goes right back to that idea that the fresh start changes the date, but it doesn't change your house.
Right. Same house, same problems. You cannot rely on willpower alone. Willpower is a finite resource. It's like a muscle that gets tired or a battery that drains throughout the day. You have to audit and design your environment to do the heavy lifting for you.
So this is the concept of nudging.
Yes. Making the good habits easier and the bad habits harder. If you want to run in the morning, do not rely on your sleepy, groggy morning brain to find your running shoes and socks. Lay your gym clothes out the night before, put them right by your bed.
And do the reverse for bad habits, I assume.
Exactly. If you want to stop mindlessly checking social media while you work, don't just try to resist. Put the phone in another room. Add friction. But there's a specific cognitive tool here that's really effective called implementation intentions.
The if-then planning.
That's it. You pre-plan your response to predictable points of failure or fatigue. You create a simple rule for your brain to follow. If I feel the urge to open Instagram, then I will stand up and drink a full glass of water first.
So you're programming your prefrontal cortex, the rational brain, to interrupt the automatic impulse from your emotional brain.
You're taking the decision out of the heat of the moment. Because in the moment, when you're tired and stressed, your emotional brain will always choose the easy dopamine hit. You need your rational brain to have already made the decision for you ahead of time.
This all brings us to the final, and I think maybe the most profound, section of this whole dive. It's about identity. Because at some point, all these systems and tricks, they have to become part of who you are. Right.
This is the crucial leap from starting up to long-term maintenance. The research shows a very clear difference between the intention to increase a behavior and the intention to maintain it.
What's the difference there?
The intention to increase something, I want to run more, I want to read more, that intention naturally decreases over time as the novelty fades. But the intention to maintain a behavior, I want to keep doing this, that can actually grow stronger over time. But it requires an identity shift. It requires identity theory.
This is the work of Stetson Burke you mentioned.
Correct. Their work shows that long-term adherence, true habit formation, only happens when the behavior becomes aligned with your internal identity standards.
So an example would be?
If you see yourself as someone who is trying to run, quitting is really easy. It just means you stop trying, no big deal. But if you see yourself as a runner,
then not running feels wrong.
it creates what they call negative affect. It causes cognitive dissonance, guilt. You feel like you're betraying your own identity. The internal monologue becomes, I am a runner and runners run. It shifts from a choice to a non-negotiable part of who you are. The key is to stop saying, I'm trying to do X, and start saying, I am an X.
So it's sort of a fake it till you make it strategy for your own self-concept.
In a way, yes, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you start to carry yourself and talk about yourself as if you are already the successful person, you trigger something called the halo effect. You get social reinforcement. People start treating you like a disciplined person, which in turn reinforces your own belief that you are a disciplined person.
But what about when we fail? Because we will fail. And my default, when I fail at a new habit, is to trigger the what the hell effect and just quit entirely until the next available Monday.
And this is probably the most powerful and counterintuitive strategy in the entire stack. To succeed, you absolutely need a get-out-of-jail card.
A literal card.
A psychological policy. A protocol for failure. The biggest problem with the fresh start mentality is that it's all or nothing. It's a binary of perfect or failed. If the perfectly clean slate gets one tiny smudge on it, our instinct is to throw the whole slate away.
Totally. I ate one cookie, so the entire diet is ruined. Might as well eat the whole sleeve.
To break that, you have to reframe the slip up. It is not an identity failure. It is a data point. The thought isn't, I am a failure. It's, I am experiencing a challenge. And here is the absolute rule. You do not wait for the next temporal landmark.
No waiting for Monday.
Never. You restart at the very next opportunity, the next hour, the next meal. If you miss your 6 a.m. workout, you don't say, I'll get it tomorrow. You do 10 push-ups at noon. You have to break the brain's logic that says, I need a clean break to start again.
Yeah.
You make the break now.
That's incredibly powerful. It takes all the power away from the calendar and gives it back to you in the moment.
It restores your sense of agency, and that really is the core of moving from starting to finishing.
Okay, let's try to synthesize all of this. We have covered a huge amount of ground.
We certainly have.
The fresh start effect, that wonderful energetic feeling you get on New Year's Day or your birthday, is a real biological gift. It's a surge of dopamine designed to help us overcome inertia and get started.
But it's just a starter motor. It is not the engine that will get you to your destination.
Right. The engine is the system you build to get you through the saggy middle. And that saggy middle is inevitable. It's not a flaw in your character. It's a built-in feature of human psychology. We lose our reference points and our dopamine drops because the novelty is gone.
And the brain stops fantasizing about a magical reward and starts feeling the very real effort cost.
So the solution isn't to just find more willpower or try harder. It's to be smarter than your own brain. Break goals into micro habits to manufacture your own dopamine. Shorten the middle by creating new artificial landmarks. Audit your environment so your house is helping you, not fighting you.
And most importantly, shift your identity. Stop renting the behavior and start owning it.
I love that phrasing. Stop renting, start owning.
And remember, 2026 is still a new chapter. But you don't need to become a brand new person to become a better one.
That's really the core takeaway, isn't it?
And if I can leave you, and everyone listening, with one final thought, think about the windshield and the rearview mirror of a car.
Okay, I'm listening.
The windshield, the view of the future, is enormous. It's expansive. You can see everything out there. The rearview mirror, the view of the past, is tiny. It's just a little sliver. The fresh start effect tempts us to keep glancing in that rearview mirror and saying, look at that mess I left behind me. But the real work, the important work, is looking through the windshield and understanding that the most critical moment isn't the first start, that glorious dopamine-fueled January 1st. It's the decision to keep going on a boring Tuesday in February when the novelty has faded, the dopamine is gone, and you're just doing the work. You are the author of the next chapter, not the last one.
That is where the real change happens, in the boring, unsexy, difficult middle. So here's our challenge to you. Don't wait for next Monday. Don't even wait for tomorrow morning. Find one micro win today, right now. Write one sentence of that report. Do 5 squats by your desk. Drink 1 glass of water. Restart your own clock right now.
Make your own fresh start.
Thanks for diving deep with us. See you next time.
See you then.